So we've had two weddings, and we've had the Dane Commander bit. This is husband number 3. Robert Houston. He's an MP for West Toxteth. I think that's taken outside the Houses of Parliament. It does look like it, doesn't it? Shipping magnate. She'd actually met him at the 1905 Spithead Review. Now, if you think AI is really good at telling you all sorts of things, I looked to see how many ships there were at the 1905 Spithead Review. And AI can't tell me that. It keeps telling me how many were at the 1897 review, which was Diamond Jubilee for Queen Victoria, although Queen Victoria was unwell and didn't go. And at that stage, there were 170 warships. At the time, that's not all of them, because there would have been ships in the Mediterranean, ships in the all over the place, basically. On the Far East Station, they'd have been in the West Indies, South America, 170. Today, there are only 40 odd that I can find which were bigger than a yacht, which I'll show you in a minute. He was already in relatively poor health when they met. She wouldn't take no for an answer, and he finally agreed to marry her. But sadly, died less than 2 years later. But he left her some money. There's a pattern here, isn't there? He left her 6 million over that, which is roughly equivalent to about 350 million today. The story is that apparently in the first version of the will, he only left her 1 million, and she tore it up and said it wasn't enough. For a lady, presumably, who got used to having huge amounts of money. And he left her a yacht. That one, which was 268 foot long. It's obviously shot here during wartime service. For comparison, that's slightly smaller than the Christina, which was the yacht of Aristotle Onassis. So it's a fairly significant vessel. Quite a political activist by this stage. Now, I said she disliked Ramsay MacDonald. That's possibly downplaying it. I think it's fair to say she detested Ramsay MacDonald and wasn't very fond of Stanley Baldwin either. This is the time of coalition government. She had developed fairly strong views. She admired Churchill and very fond of Edward, Prince of Wales, later Edward VIII. Like many wealthy, well-connected people of the time, she flirted with fascism. She apparently came quite close to writing a check to Osmond Mosley, but for whatever reason didn't. And she was presumably the bane of all sorts of people, because she would dash off letters left, right, and centre, pointing out what they were doing wrong, what they should be doing in place, and all the rest of it. And she funded no end of political candidates. If they had an agenda which she kind of half believed in, she'd cough up a lot of money. But then she had a lot of money to cough up, so hey, why not? We changed tack, really. Now, yeah, many sporting trophies, you know, if it's like Wimbledon, the winner holds it up, and the FA Cup, they hold it up. Anybody who can hold that up, you would not wish to meet on a dark night. You know, I reckon, you know, it would require several strong men. It's over 5 foot tall, about 3 foot wide. It was introduced by a guy called Schneider, and he wanted to promote development of, in particular, seaplanes. Now, you will find it if you've been to the Science Museum. I think it's on the top floor. It might actually be lower down. Sorry? No, it's in the Science Museum. It is now. I think it has been there, but it's there. And he wanted to promote development of airplanes. Now, bear in mind, 1913, this is only 10 years after the Wright brothers had first flown a Kitty Hawk. The competition took place over I think it's a 190-mile course. It's a triangular course. So they couldn't just fly in a straight line. They had to be able to turn and come back. So it's about the same length as a Formula One race today. That's the first winner, a French plane, Déperdussin, which I think looks quite good. The speed there is slightly misleading because apparently he was flying around the course and he lost count. So he landed and said, "I am the victor." And the answer was, "No, you aren't, mate. You haven't finished yet. You've got to get back, have another couple of laps." So the probable speed was nearer to 60, but 46. Following year, we've got 87 miles an hour. Wow. So with tabloid, so cool because it was really quite small, with an 80 horsepower engine. Now, there's a bit of a hiatus here caused by the First World War, and I'm not going to show you all the winners. 1922, you should be ashamed of that. That is so ugly, it's untrue. But what you've got there is a 300 horsepower engine, and people have obviously started to work out the way to get it to go quickly is just to put a big engine in there. By the mid-1920s, governments start getting involved, and they're saying, it's national prestige here. So the Americans have been, the guy there is Jimmy Doolittle, who became famous in 1942 for leading the attack when they flew off a carrier to attack Japan, the Doolittle raids. Mussolini weighed in and said, "We must win. It's a matter of national honor." So 1926, yeah, they duly won with an even bigger engine here. You'll notice things are getting a little bit smoother here. They're getting a little bit more streamlined, and all he's really got there is a big engine with some wings attached. 1927, Supermarine, up to 281 miles an hour with a 900 horsepower engine. Same design of this one. So that one. Now, I would have thought you'd have been ashamed of that if you can subsequently get onto that. But hey. And we won again in 1929. Under the rules of the competition, if you win 3 times in a row, you get to keep the trophy. And the government originally said, yeah, we'll put some money in. But 1931, you're talking of, they've had the Wall Street crash, the economy isn't going well, and they pulled out. And they said, no, not putting any money in. Cue outrage in the papers. Retired generals would be going harumph and spilling their gin. Letters to the paper. What happens? Well, Lucy decides to put the money in. She said, here's 100 grand. 9-10 million in today's terms. Why did she do that? Well, because she could, I think. So let's go back on that one for a minute. And because she detested the current government. So it was a question of her, finding a way of, getting some revenge effectively. So we're talking 281 miles an hour, 900 horsepower engine. And this is the one. At that time, that was your frontline fighter for the RAF. It could do all of 180 miles an hour. It was in one of these, incidentally, that Douglas Bader crashed, and the accident that cost him the use of his legs. Yeah, Bristol Bulldog, 500 horsepower, had 2 guns. You have to sort of say, well, that's the winning entry. It's got a 2,000 horsepower engine in it. But of course, it only has to last for a relatively short period. It's a V12 engine from Rolls-Royce. And we were into this sort of like, so what was the impact of that? I can remember what I've got my next slide. Oh, this is Lucy, even older, but still looking good. The guy, top right, at the back there, is R.J. Mitchell, Staffordshire boy. He was the chief designer. Now, when you look back and see, well, because the course is triangular, they had to learn not only to go quickly, but to be maneuverable. The ministry had come up with some specifications for, they said, well, if they're going at 300, we better ask for a little bit more than 180. So there was a specification out for 250 mile an hour. But the legacy you get is that. That's the prototype Spitfire, K5054. 300 mile an hour and 8 guns. So that's very much her legacy that comes directly from having accumulated vast amounts of wealth. She was reckoned to be one of the handful of the wealthiest women in the country. It's quite difficult to be sure because some of the really wealthy people, it's tied up in land and it's difficult to value land. We didn't have the Sunday Times with a rich list back then, but she was certainly stinking rich, that's for sure. And she was going through it at quite a rate. But that's the legacy she had. And that also is her legacy. That is the oldest airworthy Spitfire. Came off the early one off the production line at Castle Bromwich and actually fought in the Battle of Britain. You have to question how critical was her intervention? Well, I've highlighted the things that I think are important. By winning the trophy, it keeps people the encouragement there to keep innovating rather than, oh, well, we won't bother. It also puts excellence on the front page. I think it gives this feel-good factor, a bit like when we win a sporting trophy, which happens every now and again. Wellington said Waterloo was a close-run thing, and it was, but then so was the Battle of Britain. See, I think we should all be very glad that a Cockney Sparrow chose to invest in a future that she would never see, because she died in December 1936, aged 79. Suggestion she actually died of pneumonia because she insisted on having all the windows open and it was cold in the room, but I don't think you were ever going to convince her of anything other because she was very strong. And Reginald Mitchell died 6 months later. Now, he definitely saw the Spitfire fly because they flew over his house. We're not sure whether she did. I mean, she certainly deserved to for the legacy which we sort of know now. So, even if you know nothing about aeroplanes, you will know about the Spitfire, that's for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I actually went to an event in Southampton. I went to university in Southampton on the 40th anniversary, so it would have been 1976, of the first flight. And in the afternoon, they had 2 or 3 of them flying there, but they had Douglas Bader, Robert Stanford Tuck, Adolf Galland, the German was there, and they were all just waxing lyrical about this plane. They said you didn't so much fly it as strap it on, and it became part of you. I think the real legacy you've got of Mitchell is that he was able to integrate new ideas and produce a coherent plane. There were other planes that might be a bit quicker and other planes that maybe could turn quick, but the package together is what made the Spitfire an exceptional plane. And yeah, you're right. Everybody who's ever flown one says, it's the most marvelous experience. And when I started looking at this, I was also looking at one or two of the other people, because Rolls-Royce deserve a lot of credit here, because they developed, obviously it was their engine in the Schneider Trophy planes, the S6, S5 and S6, and it continued developing. They didn't have money. They weren't given money to develop it, but they said, the world, we are going to need an engine like that. And it was a private venture. It was originally known as PV12, Private Venture 12, project number, I think it was. So there are other people who played a role. But I think coming from, living above a warehouse, being the daughter of a warehouseman, going through becoming, a baroness, a lady being recognized in her own right. I think it's the most amazing journey. And that's why, I put this together, because, there are things that I still don't know. I mean, I couldn't find her. If anybody wants to try and have a look, where was Lucy Radmold in 1871? I can find it in 1861. Yeah, 1871. I cannot find her. Unlikely, because she was only 14 at the time. Fred was in Burton, so she wasn't with him. Yeah, that's absolutely, that's a possibility. There's also the flexibility with age, which you might have just said I was a different age, but I have checked. I've gone up and down with Lucy Radmold's born plus or minus 5 years. You check spellings, Lucy Fanny, Fanny Lucy, Red Mel, all those. Yeah, but the yeah, the parents were living, they'd moved further into the East End. She's not with them. Her sister, she's not with her or the others. There's one possible as a servant, which she could have been by that stage. But again, if any sleuth wants to locate her in 1871, I'd be interested to hear. But you're right, Sheila. She does. People do disappear. In particular, if they want to disappear, and they want to, change a few details. Yeah, there's, I think we've all got people we can't find. So I'm happy to take any further questions.
And I organised a trip to the reserve collection of the Cosford RAF Museum in Cosford.
Yeah.
They've got a reserve collection.
Right.
Just outside Stafford.
Okay.
Some aircraft used to be part of Beacon Barracks.
All right.
And they've got all the stuff they can't put on display at Cosford. They've got it.
Okay.
We went on there.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Just by Beacon Barracks, they've got all these hangars. They've got all their stuff that they can't display.
Yeah.
They've got a V2. Big Vimy parts.
Okay. Yeah.
And in some of the hangars, they've got loads of uniforms. They can't display. And we went into this one part. The chap opened this cabinet and took out handy mints. There you are, whole loads. And I've got Douglas Bader's legs. And his widow left his legs to the museum.
Right.
And I've got Douglas Bader's legs. It's absolutely fascinating. We were there for They gave us an hour. We were there for 2.5 hours.
Yeah, I'm sure you were. Yeah. Yeah, the morning session for the 40th was at one of the lecture theatres at university, and I was interested to see how he gets down the stairs. And he did it, he called it dot and carry, didn't he? So, because he got one knee and the other one, the stump was about there somewhere. So he would go down, he had did he have a stick? Yeah, I think he did have a stick by then, but he wouldn't accept any help. Pipe, of course. You could have pipe back in 1976, and woe betide anybody who tells him he couldn't, But yeah, and of course he's buried no more than about half a mile. Sorry, not Mitchell is buried no more than about half a mile from my hall of residence, but I didn't know that at the time. He's buried in Stoneham Churchyard, and my hall of residence was South Stoneham House, and it was just around the corner. But we didn't have the internet, and I didn't know, and I would have gone and had a look if I'd have realised at some stage. Yeah, probably need to. But you have to question, don't you, the mindset of this lady from her background. She must have been a force of nature.
The film First Review.
Yes, there is a mention. Mitchell, yeah.
Lady Houston in that.
Yes.
She's a formidable character.
Yeah. And you wonder what shaped it, don't you? Really, to go. I don't quite understand, what gets somebody from that background.
And your ability to deal with people, and obviously she must be very attractive, and use that.
Very strong woman to come from what was a lower middle class background.
Yeah. Absolutely.
To be so confident.
Yeah.
He's one.
Yeah, that's right.
Not be afraid.
Yeah. I mean, I think some of the people would say not all of it was for good because, she was writing fairly vitriolic. Yes, indeed. And she wasn't just going to sit there and have a quiet life. She obviously decided that, she was going to make a mark. I don't know whether some of it must have come from the time she spent with Fred, the 10 years or so they were together. And mixing a different company. I mean, the thing that kind of got me started upwards in my career at Lucas was when I had dealings with the directors of that particular business unit, and I realised that they are quite ordinary. Well, they weren't godlike. I think that was the thing, and you realise that. Well, if they can do that, well, maybe I can do that as well. And you start going for higher things. And maybe, she met a few people with Fred and realised, well, what have these people got? Well, they've got a title and they might have an estate in the country somewhere, but really? No, exactly. So,
I brought you to research. I'm wondering why.
Well, as I said, I started off looking at, I was thinking there would be a handful of people who played a role, I guess, really around about the Britain. So, so she's there. Lord Hives is because of backing the development of the engine. And not quite contemporary. There's a lady called Beatrice Shilling, who again, it's slightly after the Battle of Britain. Again, a woman who, one of the problems they had, without getting too technical, because there was a carburettor, when you go that way, the carburettor, it cuts out.
Yeah.
The float goes one way and the fuel doesn't get through and the engine goes. And the Messerschmitt had fuel injection, so it could do that. So they would have to do, and by the time they'd done all their maneuvers, they would lose out. So they would, what do we do? What do we do? I mean, ultimately, they had fuel injection, but what she came up with was a restrictor to put in the fuel line. And it was known, this was a great joke at the 40th thing, Miss Schilling's orifice. The guys all thought that was tremendously funny, but you know. And it restricted the flow and it solved the problem, basically. Now, Miss Schilling, she later married, but she was a bit of a girl too. She studied engineering. She liked motorcycles. She held the speed record at one stage for a lap around Brooklands. And when she came up with this idea, she went round on her motorcycle to various bases to fit this particular restrictor herself. You know, so she did not fit the stereotype of the little woman at all. So she was another one. But as I dug into Fanny's, and you know, I just kept finding more and more, which is why I said it's like a rabbit hole. You go down, you find, and you realise you can't put other things with this. It's too much of a story on its own. So, yeah, there are other stories still to be told, which I might get round to.